This is the second podcast for Live Life Well, a podcast for all things well-being, talking to speakers, experts and practitioners on all subjects. We can't wait to share our content with you over the next few weeks, months and decades as we uncover how to live life well. Today we'll be discussing prevention rather than cure when it comes to maintaining good mental health, particularly within the next generation of adults, and how a new app could support us in building a healthy relationship, not only with ourselves, but also with our phones. So before I introduce our guest today, let's just throw out some statistics just so that we have a really big grasp on what we're dealing with at the moment. So statistics show that anxiety and depression in children has risen by a staggering 48% since 2004, with half of all mental illnesses beginning at the age of 14. Suicide, unfortunately, is named as the biggest killer of young people within the UK. And unsurprisingly, these statistics has caused a national review of how we can better support our young people, looking at the mindset of prevention rather than cure. So as I'm saying those words out loud, I'm really mindful that if you haven't got children or you don't work alongside children, sometimes we can become a little bit detached from those figures. But I think we have to be really mindful that these young people are going to be growing up to be our servicemen and women. They're going to become our doctors, they're going to become our teachers, they're going to be our politicians. And already 15.4 million working days are lost to work-related stress, depression and anxiety. So it's an issue that doesn't just affect young people or adults, it's a community basis that we really have to address.
Yeah, massively.
So Claire, today we're joined by Claire Libby. Claire, you're the founder of I Am Me app, and I'm so privileged to have you with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. So, Claire, I could just go ahead and introduce the app and tell people about it, because I'm so passionate about it, but I'm going to just hand over straight to you for you to give us a little bit of an overview about how you define the app, and also what was your inspiration behind it?
I think whenever you sort of embark on a project or make decisions about your life, it's always good to kind of think, why does this need to happen? Why do I want to do this? And for me, the why with I Am Me was really clearly defined. It simply needed to be done. Mm-hmm. The statistics that you've just talked about,
staggering, aren't they?
They're only going to increase. And I think the ones that really jump out for me are the ages of those young people. So 50% of illnesses being established by the age of 14, predominantly young people tend to get support when they are either in the workplace or they go into adulthood and they realise those fundamental things that happened when they were younger have really shaped who they are, and they feel confident to have a voice and get support. But I think much more needs to be done on a preventative level, which is why I Am Me is focused on young people from the age of 12. I think it's really important that there is something out there that educates young people so that they understand more about themselves, more about what's going on in the world and how they can cope with it better. So yeah, for me the why was absolutely it had to be done, something needed to change.
How have you found the app at the moment in terms of what you're noticing young people in that age bracket are seeking out? What have you noticed in terms of the data of what the app is revealing about the way that our young people are experiencing their mental and physical health?
I think first of all it's really important to point out whenever we engage with young people there's a unanimous yes, this is needed, thank you for creating this, it's really good to have some resources there. I think the highest searchable words on the app, I think the first one is stress, the second one is self-harm, and the third one is suicide. So whenever anyone interacts on the app, we're able to see what words they're searching for, what content they're accessing, and also interestingly what time of day they're looking for this content.
Oh,
so
wow.
you can see people on there like 2-3 in the morning searching for things like suicide, which is obviously incredibly alarming. But more than anything, it helps you realise that actually this is why it needs to happen, this is why there needs to be more information out there. And I'm just really grateful that we've had all the support we've had so far to be able to create this platform for young people.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I want to just, for people that are listening into this podcast or watching today, to understand a little bit about what are the foundations of the app in terms of who is creating it, because I know I'm understanding that a little bit of it is made by young people for young people, but then also you've got some outside contributors. So how does it work in principle?
Okay, so essentially it's about 2.5 years worth of research has gone into this, and it started off with just talking to young people, and that was a real mix of young people. So some young people that have really struggled, disordered eating, self-harming, attempted suicide, and then some young people that, you know, are kind of flying, you know, A-star students, sports captains, you know, really supportive home life, really settled. And just generally talking to them about what was needed. My background for the last 10 years has been working with big corporates and helping them to attract and engage with young people and to support them in terms of creating development programs. So when someone transitions from education into the world of work, how can they be supported through that process so that they thrive in that new working environment? So there was an insight on my part to that. Conversations with employers, you know, quite recently one had an attempted suicide from an apprentice, one had an actual suicide from an apprentice. So it was lots of different conversations happening to get that information. So almost the topic areas, I guess, were designed by young people. They said what they wanted information on, and then it was a case of finding experts, people like yourself as well, to come and contribute towards it. But the process that a young person would go through, if I take stress as an example, if they were to work through the content on stress, it takes them through sort of self-actualization. So how stressed am I at this particular time on a scale of 1 to 10? And depending on the response that they give, it will then take them through a series of questionnaires so that they can start to understand what is triggering that stress, what is the cause, so they can really understand what's going on in their world and make adjustments accordingly. I think perhaps it's not until you get to adulthood that you can have a better grasp on what's causing stress, and you still don't necessarily understand it fully.
And even so, in adulthood, I think we really struggle to not only know what to do, but to just start that first step of just acknowledging that something doesn't feel right. We're very good as a society of squashing things, suppressing things, and almost feeling like we don't deserve help until we're broken, until it becomes so overwhelming that we feel very lost. So the fact that this is already starting at this kind of early level, just checking in, I think is just absolutely invaluable at the moment for this generation.
And you've hit the nail on the head. It is checking in. So part of what we're trying to educate young people with is how important it is to check in daily with yourself. So how have I woken up? You know, what kind of mood am I in today? What happened before I went to bed that's kind of stuck with me and has carried me into this mood the next morning? And what am I going to do today to get myself out of this place? And it may be that it's something that's completely out of their control and they're just going to have to sit with that emotion and work through it. But also helping them understand that you can't necessarily be happy 100% of the time. Things happen and they make you feel a bit rubbish, and that's okay. But if they can track those feelings, track those emotions, and get a better handle on understanding when something isn't quite right for them, when they do actually need a bit of extra support, they've got that data there. The number of young people I've spoken to that have gone to a doctor and said, you know, I think I'm struggling, I think I'm depressed, and their immediate reaction is, okay, go away and track how you're feeling, track these moods that you're having, and come back to us and then we'll have a look at it, which absolutely you need that data. But with the app, they've got that data already. They can go and show a graph. This is how I've been feeling. You know, you can see the moods that I'm having, and I do need support. So it's really just taking young people through a whole different areas of content on the app, whether that has to do with stress or headspace or nutrition, sleep, all these different things, so that they can understand what's right for them. And they've got tools and tips on there to help them if things do go a little bit off kilter.
Hearing you say that as an example of going to the GP, and yes, in our healthcare system at the moment, it's almost needed that there's a broader range. You know, how long have you been feeling like this as opposed to how are you feeling today? So the fact that the app can create that tool, it sounds like the app also is about not just checking in with the self, but also using as a resource to communicate out the needs, you know, to be able to have that message to the GP or even a parent or a friend to show, look, I have been engaging in this app for this many days or this many weeks, and this is kind of what it's profiling. I'm really kind of aware of people that are familiar with my way of working, knowing that I'm a registered dance movement psychotherapist, and my kind of focus is all about face-to-face interactions and the power of integrating mind and body and understanding more about rebuilding our relationship with the feeling and the moving body. And so some people might think it's a little bit ironic that I'm contributing to an app, because in some ways the app can be seen as something quite disconnected and potentially detaching from that kind of physical element. But what I absolutely love about I Am Me is the fact that you have managed to creatively bridge this in terms of the interactive elements, the videos, the audios, and the community. So there's an individual focus and a community focus without those things becoming lost. Can you tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about how you've managed that in terms of what's available through the app?
Yeah, of course. And I think, you've hit the nail on the head. That's something that I came up against when I had the idea about it. It's almost, isn't that a bit hypocritical, the fact that we know that technology, or we believe that technology is causing these issues for young people, and yet you're creating an app. I think it was in 2011, 50% of the population owned a smartphone, and it was that year that the medical profession saw a massive rise in the cases of anxiety and stress and depression with teenagers. For me, technology isn't going to go away, and actually I love technology. I think it's about educating young people to work with it in a really balanced way.
Yeah.
So, for example, there isn't a chat function on the app, and that is 100% purposeful. We've had some suggestions from young people that they would like a chat function on there, and that's one thing that I've just really stuck to my guns about, because the whole point of the app is it's called I Am Me for a reason. The moment you sort of introduce that function, the comparisons creep in. And I've spoken to a number of young people that were resorting to self-harm, and even there were competitive elements in that area of their life. If they weren't progressing in a way that perhaps one of their peers were, they thought they should try harder. So in answer to your question, it's about creating a really positive space on their phone. Get rid of those apps and whatever else you're doing on your phone that is causing you to have negative thoughts about yourself, and save your data for something that's going to have a really positive impact on you. In terms of the videos and the audios, there's messages, but really inspiring messages. So it's not saying that you should be happy all the time. There's messages from young people that have really struggled, but they have come out the other side, and they talk about their experiences. So I think anyone that is kind of like, telling their child you need to get off your phone and you need to do X, Y, and Z, the whole point of this app is that it educates that person for themselves, so that they can go through that process of understanding, actually, if I do perhaps spend less time on my phone prior to going to sleep, I can see that the quality of sleep that I'm having is better. So they have that realisation for themselves. If they start to unfollow people that are having a negative impact on them, they see that for themselves. So it's less kind of parent-child, it's more they're educated enough now to understand that actually they want to do it for themselves. So I think that's the whole point of having an app. And also, there are some amazing books out there. I've read probably every kind of self-help book that is available in the last 2.5 years, and it's almost like we've distilled all that information for them, so that they don't feel like they, on the way to school on a bus, they're sitting there with a self-help book, and people are looking and pointing their fingers because you've got problems because you're reading that. It's very much on their phone. They could be watching a video about anything with their headphones in, but it just happens to be something incredibly positive that's helping them.
I think it's invaluable, the element of just opening up the dialogue, that every part of our human condition is okay. I think we get very anxiety ridden when we experience low mood or we experience stress, but actually if we're going through stressful times or we're going through things that do genuinely impact our low mood, that's okay. And I think the way that the app is run, it feels like that it really helps to normalize these emotions and checking in with these things, but also tracking when does it become something that is unmanageable, when does it become something that I need extra support with, whether that's through the app or seeking further advice from experts outside. Just mindful of people listening to today's podcast and watching. I wonder whether there might be an element of anxiety from potential parents about supporting their young person to engage in this app independently, and I wonder what can be said about reassuring them, or and how you've managed to keep that safety and that kind of ethical boundary of how the app is being engaged with.
I think there's a number of things. So the way that we kind of raise awareness about what we're doing is by going into schools and colleges, universities, and just essentially talking about why we've created it. So it's not kind of a hard sell. It's just, this is what we're doing. We'd love your feedback on it. It is student led. All of the content areas have been deemed to be important by young people. So it's continually evolving, and it will always need to be updated. So that whole kind of this is needed. It's coming from young people. It's not me sitting here saying I think they need help with managing their stress, or they need to have better sleep hygiene. It's all driven by young people. These are the things that they're struggling with. So to a parent sort of wondering whether it's something they want to let their child have access to, just download it themselves first of all, sense check it. All of the stuff all of the content that's on the app. So say for example, if it was to do with I don't know, headspace, in terms of you think your child is spending too much time on devices, but you don't know necessarily how to broach that subject with them. If they go through the content themselves, they'll maybe pick up some tips that will help them have that conversation. And then they'll see for themselves how their son, daughter, might be able to go on the app and find out information for themselves. So it really is a big education process. All of the information that we've got has come from experts. It's not just us sort of plucking things out of the air. It's people that really know their stuff.
And I think that's key, especially at the moment. We know that young people and adults, we do love the element of social media and apps, but sometimes we have to be careful that the people that are developing the content are trained in the advice that they're giving out. I mean, it's so easy to be able to go onto the whoever it is platform or profile and think, they've had this for their lunch, or they're doing this for their mental health, but their advice that they're giving isn't necessarily based in research or evidence. I think that it sounds as though you're very mindful in vetting who are the contributors to the app.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've spoken to a number of GPs about this, and that's GPs that work on or have worked on campus at universities, so they are 100% knowledgeable in terms of the kinds of struggles that young people are facing. GPs that deal with kids with mental illnesses, across the spectrum in terms of what they're dealing with, and they've all unanimously said this is something that is going to be used and will add huge value. So if you've got GPs saying that, you've got people like yourself. We've worked really closely with Tick Plus in terms of the content and the conversations they're having with the young people that they support. So Teens in Crisis have been invaluable in making sure the content that's on there is almost advice that they would be giving themselves if they were in front of that young person. And this doesn't take away, as you said, that face-to-face contact. That is absolutely needed. But what this does do is hopefully starts a bit sooner. It starts that conversation and that thought process sooner. And I know for the young advisors that kind of sit behind this and drive it forward, they've all said that if they had access to this at a much younger age, they're not saying that it would necessarily have stopped them going down the route that they're going to, but it certainly would have helped them get a handle on it much sooner. And that's what it's about. It's about starting those conversations sooner. It's about wanting to make a massive shift in our culture in this country, so that young people feel equipped to deal with that, so that looking after their mental health and their physical health are of equal importance. And I think mental health in young people, when you say mental health, they naturally gravitate towards anxiety, depression. They don't understand that actually that's mental illness. That's not mental health. Mental health can be incredibly positive, as physical health can. If you want to be physically fit, you have to eat the right sorts of food, you have to work out,
attend to yourself.
And it's helping young people understand that actually, because of the way that technology is advancing, because in 2011 the usage of smartphones increased massively, if some of the young people, when I talk to them, it's like, well, you're constantly on your phone, so you've got to give your brain that kind of care and attention that you would your physical body, because if they go to the loo, they take their phone with them. If they're in a shop queue, they're on their phone. If they're waiting for a bus, they're on their phone. The moment they aren't doing something, their phone is in their hand. And all I would love to see is that they're looking at something that's really positive, that's almost telling them what they can do instead of doing that. So once that education piece has happened, it becomes really ingrained that they can, go on and look after their mental health as much as their physical health.
Absolutely. And I think if you think about where we are in terms of adulthood and how we experience the world and the stresses of life, and how our mental health and our physical health is impacted either positively or negatively, I guess one thing I'm really mindful is we haven't yet seen the impact of young people being born into this world and genuinely being raised on social media and tech, and the impact that's going to have on their adult life. And we know that there's no way of kind of stopping this, but it's about kind of going into it, integrating all these health and well-being support packages within the very thing that could change it around so there is a positive impact. It doesn't have to be a detrimental negative effect. If we find a balance, I think there's something about balance, and it sounds like I and me are trying to promote that it's not just about curing something, it's about preventing something, and it's about daily maintenance. There's something about, you know, this culture that we have, that things have to go wrong before we attempt to look at it. And I wonder from if we thought about kind of almost like a case study to kind of give it the listeners an idea about how the app works in principle. If I was somebody who was around, I don't know, say I'm a 16-year-old, kind of just about to go through my GCSEs, I'm noticing that I'm experiencing kind of low mood, I've got a bit of self-doubt about who I'm becoming, who I want to be, you know, all of the different pushes and pulls of adolescence, and I decide to download I Am Me, and my main thing is about feeling low and self-confidence. Talk us through the pathway of what would happen to that young person logging into the app. What would we envisage to see from it?
So essentially, the main hub of the app, there are loads of articles on there. So the options for any young person going onto the app is to either just literally browse through the articles, swipe along, and see if something jumps out. The titles of each article are done in such a way that there's a subtle message behind them. So if I think about something like Dance to Your Own Beat, that's very much around values and self-belief and living a life that you want to lead, you know, not kind of being swayed by other people and their opinions. The F Word is all about failure. There's information on there around resilience, success. So if someone were in a low mood, there's a section on there which is around tracking your mood, so they could go in there and understand that actually low moods are very normal. People experience them at various points throughout the day, but it might be connected to perhaps something like their diet. If they're not eating the right sort of foods to kind of keep that energy going, it might be connected to that. It might be connected to the fact that they're not sleeping terribly well at that moment. So there'll be tools and tips of different things that they can do. In terms of exam stress, there's a whole load of information in terms of being able to spot the symptoms of stress, how to manage stress, things that they can do to counterbalance that. So it's constantly sort of picking information out, and depending on what they're putting into the search function, it then pulls through lots of other articles that we feel might be relevant to them, that could support them, and also videos and audios from other people that they can then listen to. So if they were to go in and type in low mood, a whole load of other content would come through that is relevant to that can support it. Things like sleep, nutrition, headspace, because it may be that they're just feeling completely overwhelmed. There's some great content on there about defining their own version of success, so actually writing down their own definition of success, because I think so often young people can be kind of swayed by what their parents did in terms of their careers, and their real passion for what they want to do kind of goes out the window a little bit. So it's
and giving permission to explore that even.
Yeah, definitely. So it's information around having those kind of courageous conversations, whether that be with teachers or parents or, you know, people you're in a relationship with. So for a young person going on there, I think it's a starting point. So it starts that communication and engagement process. Then it kind of spans out into loads of other content areas that they're all linked together. It's almost like it's lifestyle medicine. So it's all based around.
I love that, lifestyle medicine.
Based around you know, stress, headspace, nutrition, movement, obviously, you know, and relationships. You know, the relationships that you have, the community that you're part of, play a massive impact in your life, and especially for young people. You know, their friends have such an influence about how they feel about themselves, in terms of their self-esteem. So it's almost like covering all of those 6 different areas off, so that any young person can actually think, okay, I'm going to do this kind of, you know, check in each of these areas, and I feel like I've got more control over where I want to go, what's going on in my life at the moment, and they can just dip in and out of it as they need to.
It sounds like you've really managed to get that whole holistic approach to a young person's lifestyle and what things need to be looked at and managed and balanced out. And I think one of the things that I absolutely adore about this app, and I'm not getting paid to say this, but it's just my genuine feeling, is that it's not blanket, it's bespoke in terms of, I think, working in the NHS and private practice. I know that there's a lot of fear-mongering sometimes, but also a genuine fear about things that can potentially trigger other young people. You know, I've heard many times of, and it's all been from a wanting to achieve something positive, where there might be a open discussion at school within a class about eating disorders, for example, and some of these young people aren't ready to hear some of the facts and figures about such a complex experience, and sometimes that can be hugely triggering for a young person who's never thought about their relationship with food or their body in a detrimental way. And so I think one of the things that I would say to any parent or any young person who is thinking about exploring I Am Me is to feel safe in the fact that when you engage in this app, you're really looking at it from what that young person needs, so things that are coming up, things that's going to come up on their search feed are related to actually what the app has noticed as potentially going to be helpful and supportive, as opposed to just blanket, oh, you're 15 and potentially there might be something going on for you related to stress or related to eating disorders, for example. So I think that's something that feels very unique as an app. Yeah,
definitely. And I think you're absolutely right. And I have heard of cases where young people are struggling and they perhaps go to their GP and they're not deemed to be extreme enough to warrant further support. So there's that sense of, okay, well, I obviously need to be better at this to actually get the support I need, so I'm going to go that step further, and I'm going to do something that's really going to make people stop and
like
listen.
The ultimate expression of distress. I need to be so unwell for someone to hear me.
Yeah, definitely. Whereas I think what we're trying to do is just get each young user to be more in tune with what's going on with them. And if I think about relationship with food, it may be that there are some little patterns that are occurring that go unnoticed at home, because sometimes lives are busy. I'm a mum of 2 teenagers. I know exactly dinner times can literally just be absolutely manic.
Grab and go.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's almost like I want that young person to have that light bulb moment for themselves, that actually this is a little bit out of kilter and this is causing me a bit of stress. So what can I do? What can I try that's going to kind of alleviate that stress in a way that I still feel comfortable? And I think that's what happens with each of the content areas. It's just about each young person understanding more about themselves, so that when things do go slightly off piste, they can think to themselves, okay, I need to keep my eye on this. Or they have a top tip that comes up on the app of things that they can try to kind of take a step back and regain control themselves. It's not kind of doing away with GPs, it's not doing away with all those fantastic charities that are out there to support young people and all those services. It's really just about helping each young person be more in tune with themselves and offering information that is just relevant to what they're going through, and not worrying about what their friends are up to.
It sounds hugely empowering and validating for any young person out there. I'm really aware that with everything that we've spoken about, it's not something that is just a conversation between you and I. This is happening, I think, on a society level. We're really noticing that a shift needs to happen, and there's different initiatives being launched. I know I was watching television the other day, and there was a big campaign about pausing things and families coming together. And these are organisations that have a lot of funding behind them to support these initiatives becoming real life projects. How are you currently sustaining the content within I Am Me, and also how are you managing to create your vision for it remaining a free app for young people, so that it's not exclusive to any young person in particular, that any young person seeking out this app, they can download it for free?
There's a few points. So I think first of all, the kind of one of the biggest drivers is that it is about empowering young people, and it had to be free. There's it just didn't sit well to make something like this a cost for someone, and I would hate to think of a young person not being able to access it because they couldn't afford it. Every single young person I've come into contact with has a phone. They have a better phone than I've got, so the fact that it was an app was an obvious choice. What we're doing at the moment is we're working with corporate organisations who are helping to kind of keep this going and help us to grow it. So their funding has enabled the app to get to the point that it's at so far. People are contributing their own time. Businesses are creating flyers for us. They're designing things for us. We've had some fantastic input from GE Aviation, SLG, SJP, St James's Place. And we continually need that support. this is done in my own time. I've got a full-time job as well, so being able to be able to do this is a real passion for me. It's something that I feel incredibly strongly about. But even funding us to go into a school to do a talk on it, to raise awareness is really important. You know, the marketing collateral that we want to give each of the schools so that they can raise awareness of this. So when we go into a school and introduce it, we are then setting up student-led societies in those schools, IME committees with representatives from each year group, so right from year 7 up to sixth form, and they really drive forward this initiative within their school, making sure that each young person knows that this resource is there for them, so that they've got you know, information, they know they can go somewhere and get some advice on it. So the funding is really, really important. Without the funding, you know, I can do so much, but I could do so much more with more funding. And it's incredibly frustrating. If I think about the first week that it went live, there were just under 8,000 interactions on the app. And at that point we had no money for marketing, so that is literally just through word of mouth. So that's an interaction as an article read or a video watch. And every time we go into a school, the engagement levels on the app go through the roof. You can see over Christmas, just a particular week, there are over 400 articles being read.
It's really speaking for itself, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's fantastic because you go in and you think, oh, I'm not sure that landed quite well. I'm not sure, you know, because engaging with teenagers can be quite tricky.
Yeah.
But when you go home and then you are to see who's been on it, and it's like, oh wow, okay, they really did take notice of what we're saying, and oh, that's interesting, they're looking at these. So I think for an employer thinking, why would it be something that we would, you know, want to part some money towards when we've got loads of other things that we need to demonstrate return on investment? For me, it's really clear, the stats that you gave at the beginning in terms of those days lost for businesses due to stress, anxiety and depression. You know, it's costing the UK economy over £30 billion a year. And if 50% of mental health illnesses are established by the age of 14, putting on a yoga class or a Zumba class in someone's lunch break,
not going to touch the size, is it?
No, and then asking them to make up those hours that they've given them. You know, that for me is a complete tick box exercise. They need to be doing something that's preventative. They need to be supporting young people that will come up into the UK economy and into our businesses, because otherwise that number is just going to spiral. You know, these are people in the workplaces that haven't had that reliance as much on technology. The young people that are coming through now have a greater reliance on technology and social media, and those cases of mental health illnesses are just going to keep rising. So it's almost like it has to be about prevention.
We can't ignore this any longer.
No, absolutely. And I think anyone that recruits an apprentice or an intern or a grad or runs a workplace, you know, a work placement scheme, they have a responsibility.
They can be part of the solution.
100%, and it has to be about prevention. It's too late to have those conversations when it's established. It's so hard for someone to go through that process and get support and seek help when it's been manifesting for so many years. I think it's much more about putting in some investment now, and that will help all of the young people be much more sort of have a handle on their own mental health and know what they need to do to look after it. And if they need to have those conversations and that expert advice, they'll have more confidence in terms of knowing what's right for them and what's wrong for them as well.
Yeah, filtering out their kind of bespoke package for themselves.
Yeah.
In terms of anyone that might be listening or watching today, is there any way, if people are interested in becoming involved or supporting IME, is there any way of contacting you?
We've started to create a presence on Instagram, which is at IME Global. We had literally yesterday a person in Poland asking if they could access it, so it's now available worldwide, which is fantastic.
I love it, to respond to the demand, literally.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if anyone wants to get on board as a supporter, they can do that through our website, which is imeapp.com, or just email hello@imeapp.com. But on our supporters page, we've got information on all the companies that we're working with so far and all the individuals as well.
Amazing. So Claire, working in the NHS and private practice myself alongside young people, I am always hugely inspired by their resilience and just their engagement with life, even when things are a struggle. Knowing that you are more and more working alongside young people in all kind of aspects of their life, what have you? Is there anything that they have taught you in terms of how to live life well?
I think it's really inspiring that young people seem to be more driven by their passion. I think, you know, the whole kind of marketplace is massively shifting. I think we're seeing a lot more sort of young entrepreneurs going out and following their dream, which is brilliant. You know, I think it's very easy to fall into a career because you don't know what other options are, or you feel like it's something you should do. So for me, I think that's probably it. You know, this is something that I've sort of dwelling with for about 3-4 years before I actually decided to do something about it. So it's that inspiration of, you know, give it a go. If it doesn't work out, then, you know, if you've helped one person, then great. So I think that's definitely the takeaway I would go with. You know, you've got to find your passion, find your bliss, and 100% go with it and throw everything at it, or find a career that enables you to do more of what you love.
Well, I would say that your passion is definitely infectious. Thank you so much for coming on Live Life Well podcast today to talk about everything that you're doing, but also sharing your own personal experience, and that's hugely valuable.
Thank you.
So if you want to download the app, where can listeners or viewers go to download this app?
It's available on the App Store and Google Play, or you can download it through our website. There's just a click download button to access it.
Amazing.
So all of those are useful.
Great. So thank you so much for coming today. I would say make sure that if you are someone who is acknowledging things becoming a little bit tricky, or just wanting to engage in an app out of curiosity to sustain your own physical and mental health, then just download this app. Have a little first step to see what might be supportive for you. But ultimately, if you are someone that is struggling for a long period of time, don't feel like you have to struggle alone. Make sure that you talk to that friend, that teacher, that parent, and use the app potentially in communicating your story, because all that we want is to make sure that we are encouraging young people and adults to look after their well-being. So join us next time.